What do geotechnical engineering, community involvement, and a touch of art all have in common? In this special edition of the Better the Pond Pondcast, I had the pleasure of sitting down with two incredible leaders from Sanborn Head and Associates. Luke Norton, Vice President and proud recipient of the illustrious James Pond Award, and Dori Ross, Senior Vice President and powerhouse of intentional leadership. We had a deeper conversation about what it really takes to build an organization that feels like it cares. This episode dives into more than just engineering. Luke and Dori open up about the motivations behind their careers, the evolving role of leadership, and how they are shaping a culture of trust, mentorship, and purpose at Sanborn Head. We explore everything from the art and science fusion that fuels innovative thinking, how intentionality shapes both parenting and project leadership, what it means to really fly in the V formation as a team, and why fostering a culture of gratitude and support is not just a good strategy, but a high performance one. Whether you're in engineering, leadership, or just a fan of real talk about work and life, you're going to love this conversation. It's filled with wisdom, humility, and a shared belief that when we support each other, we all fly further together. My name is Warren Berry, and I'm your host and the founder of Instinctive Solutions. And get ready to take a deep dive on the Better the Pond Pondcast with my special guests, Luke Norton and Dori Ross. All right, today I would consider this a special edition of the Better the Pond Pondcast. So not very often do I get to have a dynamic duo such as you two. So to my audience and to the world, I want to introduce you to Luke Norton, the VP of Sanborn Head and Associates, and of course the Dori Ross, the Senior VP of Sanborn Head and Associates. And the reason that we're here is because of the pure genius of Luke Norton. And there he is on the right, and he won the prestigious James Pond Award. And he figured he didn't want to just do this on his own because he's such a good guy and likes to better the pond, right? It's like, hey, we're better together. So they said, hey, Dori, come along with us and let's go and have a conversation. So to Luke Norton and Dori Ross of Sanborn Head and Associates, thank you so much for your time to come on the Better the Pond podcast. It is fantastic to have you.
Happy to be here.
Thanks for having us, Warren.
You betcha. So just a little bit of a backstory, sort of how we got here is I had met Barrett Cole, the CEO in a Vistage Group, and we started, have some conversations. And then got to give him a shout out, and of course to Charlie Head, who's of course running all the leadership development program and everything, one of the founders of Sanborn Head. And so one thing led to another, and then next thing you know, I'm down in Bedford, Massachusetts, and I got the honor of working with the organization and trying to help you sort of understand who you are and why what you do. And, the ultimate goal was to create the aerial symphony. So there's the backstory. So to start off today, let's just freewheel this. So Luke and Dori, can tell my listeners, who is Sanborn Head and Associates, and what do you do?
Technical difficulty to deal with. So Sanborn Head is a consulting engineering firm. We, I think, got our start with geotechnical environmental engineers looking at ground down solutions on a number of projects in New England. But we've expanded beyond that. We have a whole suite of services today that includes solid waste and mechanical engineers and energy projects. And so we're always looking for cool projects, cool clients, and ways that we can bring our technical knowledge to help solve problems.
And Dori, what do you have to add to that?
We tend to be very client focused, and we pride ourselves in the way we serve our clients, and the way we collaborate as a team within Sanborn Head to really try to help work with our clients and solve kind of whatever problems that they have, and use the resources that are right at our fingertips, with the team that we have here at Sanborn Head.
So to put this into perspective, just for the listeners, is what are some of the the big major projects that you have taken on? I mean, we know that you're not just in Bedford, you're in Boston, you're all the way into Colorado, you're all over the place. But what are some of the big, just put into perspective of some of the projects you have tackled so people can get an idea, a little deeper depth on Sanborn Head?
Sure. So one of my major projects for a good chunk of my early career was University Station in Westwood, Massachusetts. If anyone's traveled up on the Amtrak line and stopped in Westwood, you're pretty close to our project. It was a kind of manufacturing hub back in the 60s through the 80s. There's a GM plant there at the time, but that industry kind of dwindled, and there was a large developable piece of land that was being considered for mixed use residential and retail. And we got started on a concept in 2006. Took that to a pretty neat layout and design, just started to break ground, and then the recession hit in 2008, and everything literally got put on hold like kind of overnight. And through the economic recovery, a completely different plan got made for that site. And so that's where kind of my kind of career took off. Going from somebody in the field gathering a lot of data. Again, I'm a geotechnical engineer kind of to start, so doing a lot of boring and subsurface exploration work, and then taking that through a new design concept to what looks like today, and being part of that whole construction and redevelopment effort.
When you look at a project of that size, that capacity, how long on average would it take to do a big project like that? And from a Sanborn Head perspective, how many people would actually have to be involved in order to actually really make this happen?
Oh, it was a whole team here, supplemented by multiple teams brought in by the client for other aspects of engineering and design as well as construction. So I think if you counted out the actual number of folks in our group that touched that project, you're probably looking somewhere in the 20s. Even though on any given day it might be one or two people in the field and myself answering the bulk of phone calls on a given day. We bring in extras here and there as the needs arise.
And then how long would a project like that take?
This was definitely a multi-year project. Not all of our projects are that long, but through the whole economic restart, that was kind of a special condition. But even with that reboot, from start to finish, it was multi-year and multi-phase.
Yeah, so it's interesting. So, you take the average person and you go to a mall, or you go to a residential area, or you go to a store, whatever the case may be. And I kind of liken it to, going on a trip. You take your suitcase and you drop it off at the agent, and no one really knows how it gets from point A to point B, but it does. But and no one really cares, right? And I don't know if anybody really thinks about how much work and time and effort and energy goes into actually just creating what needs to get started in order to build the mall or whatever the case is. I'm not, I really wonder if people actually really, take that into consideration of what happens behind the scenes.
Yeah, it could be a completely different perspective for sure.
Yeah, and that's part of having you here, right? Is let the people know, about what you're doing in Sanborn Head, because often I don't think that people really, might not even enter their minds. So, let's educate them. Dori, what are some of the projects that you've worked on and that you've done that, to give the listeners the capacity and to what extent the work that you've accomplished?
So I think it's interesting because so Luke and I are kind of a totally different perspective on Sanborn Head. So Luke's been at Sanborn Head for what, 20,
Pretty close to 20. Yeah.
20 years. A large portion of his career was here. I have been at Sanborn Head for 3 years. So I actually have had a large portion of my career elsewhere. And I was brought in at kind of a higher level to help run the business unit teams. And so my perspective is different, but I've been involved in projects at other places. I also am a geotechnical engineer by practice. But what I learned probably pretty quickly was that people like Luke Norton were a lot smarter than me about geotechnical engineering. And what I was really good at was managing projects, managing teams. And so that's kind of where I focused my energies as my career path moved forward. So here at Sanborn Head, I'm less focused on project work and more focused on kind of leveraging the power of our team and working for the good of the company to get us profitable and getting more work. And so my perspective is a little bit different, right? And when I look at Sanborn Head, I look at kind of the contributions that people like Luke and his team are doing, but others as well, right? We have a large environmental component of the company where we are helping our clients figuring out if they can repurpose sites that may be dirty. We have a large component of the company that works with clients who own landfills. And they may be thinking about how they might want to expand their landfill or different types of things that they might want to do on their landfill, looking at regulatory requirements. Um, we have a large part of the company that works with industrial clients who might have, dirty sites and looking at options there. And we also have an energy group that's doing some really cool kind of designs on figuring out how to deliver different types of energy, right, around the country to different places. We work with some really big clients there as well. So my perspective is a little bit different than Luke's and what I look at Sanborn Head.
Now it's interesting just listening to you to think of, Luke, you're responsible to help the foundation so that people can actually build buildings and build structures. And Dori, you're responsible to help build the people and the teams so that they can actually go out and actually make it happen.
Yes,
Absolutely.
Yeah. So that's what I said. I think it's a dynamic duo.
for sure.
So my next question for you is, individually, why did you get, into the business? So what drew you into this industry?
So I have a funny story. I've repeated this a few times to folks I mentor and what here already. But when I was in college, I hadn't quite decided, what discipline of engineering or what kind of technical path I might really want to go down, and I was balancing that with like a studio art degree. And I remember having a conversation with my art professor, and she goes, I just think you should do both, right? You like both ideas. What's stopping you from having both degrees? And I said, well, I don't think, I can do my engineering and art at the same time. They both have, labs and pretty long studio hours. It seems kind of difficult from where I'm looking. But what I really feel like is if I get my engineering degree, people will hire me as an engineer and I could still do art, without the degree. But if I get my art degree, no one's going to hire me as an engineer and I won't be able to do that on my own. And she looks at me, she goes, I never would have thought of that. You should be an engineer. So from that moment forward, I was a little more focused.
Based on employment.
Yeah.
You could have chose starving artist.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I could have. I could have.
Could have, yes, exactly. What about you, Dori?
So my father was an engineer, and I was pretty good in math and science. all through kind of, lower level school. And so I ended up going to the same college that he went through, same engineering program. And I think it was a real sense of pride for him that I did that and followed in his footsteps. And for me, I think seemed like a good idea at the time. And so I went with it. And I probably, looking back upon my career, probably could have gone a lot of different ways at different times. But that just kind of worked out for the moment. And I think, as I look back upon things, I don't know that I knew at that time that I had a real bend towards the business end
Hmm.
of things. And that just kind of had to unfold itself to me as I went through life.
So just, getting to know you both and work with you a couple of times in the leadership development program is, and see if this sort of fits, is that I think about when I think about engineering and whatnot is Luke, I think, you kind of, I can see you as putting in the science behind engineering and Dori, I can see you putting in the art.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's probably fair.
And so together, right, you're the art and science, right, of engineering, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
And, because I think, in my experience, and I have a few clients like what you do in the US and in Canada, and there's a lot of science. There's a ton of science, but there doesn't seem to be a lot of art. And so the artists kind of become the starving artists and sort of kind of get pushed out. So it's so interesting to see that you actually have both spectrums of Sanborn Head.
Yeah, I mean, you really can't do it without the science. I mean, the science is so incredibly important. It is the backbone of the whole thing, for sure.
Absolutely, but so is the art.
Yeah, no, it's a great combination, for sure.
Yeah, that's just what I sort of elaborate on. The combination of the two, right, is becomes a superpower.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
I
for
would
sure.
say embrace the art and the science. So and Sanborn has both. So um so either one of you or well, both of you sort of individually, what's been your biggest challenge, positive or negative, right? So the biggest sort of the thing that's ruffled your feathers, personally or professionally, and how did you respond to it?
I took some notes. So
Really?
this would have taken me a while to think about on the spot. But what I kind of jotted down was when my wife and I decided to have children, and then the choices around raising a family, they're now at an age, 10 and 12, where we talk to them about some of the intentional decisions that we've made, right? About, how we spend our time and like make priorities there, how we, build a budget and like why what we're doing now matters, 5, 10 years from now. And, make decisions based on our faith and things of that nature. Like, so this all boils down to like intention in my mind and sharing that perspective like with our kids and like showing how something we decided a few years ago like is now coming to play today, and how we hope that they're making decisions even at their age that'll impact them in the years to come at school and beyond school, and things like how do you make how do you decide on who's a good friend, right? Things
Oh,
of that nature. How where do you put your time and effort in? So that's kind of a big holistic challenge, but approach it very intentionally and kind of with purpose.
and so your kids are, so 10 and 12, mine are older, but just to let you know, the parenting, yeah, it never ends.
Yeah. Someone said little kids, little problems, big kids, big problems.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
We're hoping to start early and be intentional.
And so out of interest, like, that's interesting you went personal on this. And you know, with those things, what do you hope your kids will walk away with? I mean, you're talking to them at a young age, right? About some pretty big things. Those are bigger, bigger thinking.
Yeah.
What ultimately do you want them to walk away with?
The value of being prepared and planning, right? There's an element of that, but the the long-term reward, right, for putting in, time, little increments of time now and seeing how that investment, in themselves, in the family, in our community, how that all kind of adds up over the long haul.
And so I just wanted because the podcast, I mean, I do talk about things personally and professionally. And just from your perspective, would that be any different when you're teaching your children and what you just said? Would that be any different with your children as it would be for, you know, people that you lead in the company?
Yeah, I mean, we have a huge, multi-generational focus here, right? So there's definitely some overlap in thinking about things from a longer term perspective, right? And knowing that what I'm doing today, is the right thing to do for consideration of 5 to 10 years, out from now. So yeah, there's definitely some aspects of, mentorship that apply both in both arenas.
Right. So you get to gift it personally and professionally.
Yeah.
So thank you. So Dory, what about yourself? What's one of been your biggest challenge? What's something that's ruffled your feathers, personally or professionally? And how did you respond to it?
Yeah, it's interesting when I was listening to Luke talk about intentional intentionality, and I thought about myself. I thought Luke and I are such different individuals, and actually really appreciate Luke's perspective. And I thought about, my challenges kind of, you know, as I look back upon my career, and I find that it's, I always say you make your own luck, right? So you work hard, and luck is not something that really just happens to you, although it feels like it does, and it feels good when you're lucky, right? Um, but as I kind of look back upon my career and my life, I don't know if I was intentional about some of the zigs and zags that I took in the moment. Um, but what I will say is that I feel like I've always had a really good kind of support system, whether it be family or mentors, or even teams that I've worked with, right? People who've really felt um, like I was in the right space. And so I think that, as I came upon those challenges and those, what am I going to do? And the fork in the road, I had kind of that fallback where I had the right team in place to help me decide where I was going to take myself next. And sometimes it surprised me, right? It wasn't exactly what I had expected that I was going to be doing. And sometimes it was taking a chance on something that was like outside of my comfort zone. But I think all of those kind of zigs and zags along my career were, when I look back upon it, really stepping stones for me to do great things. I remember leaving my first job. I was there for about 3 years. I worked for a very large firm. And I just was not happy there. I remember jumping to my next job and my boss telling me when I left you, this is the biggest mistake you'll ever make. You're going to regret this your entire life. And it's funny, like, first of all, lesson, don't ever say that to somebody when they leave you. Like, that's not the right way to go about things. But it never was. Like, every time I left to go try something new and get a new experience, no matter what it is, you can always get something positive about it, from it and learn and grow. And so I think thinking about that for me has, I don't know, it's very gratifying when I look back at kind of where I've been and where I am today.
Yeah, that's great. Oh boy, Dory, there's a lot to unpack in there.
I
Um,
know,
that's
gosh.
so awesome. I love listening to you too. Um, so interesting enough, right? One of the things, luck, right? Where preparation meets opportunity. And I always say, if you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans. So,
Yep.
um, but interesting enough, and Luke, to sort of chime in on this, right? If you kind of look at your life or looking back, and just I'm listening to you talk, and you want to more have a plan, like where are we going? How are we going to get there? What's the next steps, right? Let's figure this out, and then we'll move along, right? And I'm listening, and that's what I heard from you, and I'm listening to Dori, and Dori, I would best express it as I'm going to fail forward. So
Yeah. Oh
I'm going to
yeah.
try something, make a mistake, learn from it, try, make a mistake, right? I'm just going to fail forward. So I'll figure it out as I go along. I'll build the airplane in the air, like, oh yeah, hey, let's try this and see what happens, which is not really a plan. But both being,
So I heard in Dory's story that she did have a plan. It was she had a strong support network,
That's
which
true.
allowed her to take those steps.
Yeah.
So there was a plan there.
Yeah.
was there a,
Well, the funny thing is it's interesting more when you talk about it, right? I need people like Luke for my plan to succeed. I mean, that's the bottom line, right? Like those kind of stabilizing forces who really think things through, where sometimes I tend to kind of move forward in a different way. Like those are a lot of times that's what's included in my support system, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah, which is great. So, interesting. After I left working with you, I was doing a keynote in Baltimore, and I tried something, Dory. I tried something new, which I'd never done before, and but with that came I had a massive aha moment on the plane. So this is the first public
Oh,
speaking.
unveiling.
This is the first public unveiling because I've created the thank you theory. And it's taking that person that is completely opposite. Just you said it. I need Luke to help keep me on track, keep me focused, keep me dialed in, know where we're going, and create a plan, right? And Luke, on the opposite, I don't want to speak on your behalf, but thinking about, right, I need Dory to say, oh, yeah, okay, we're in a bind, or I need to, my
New
joke
ideas,
is, the building's
energy.
burning down, Dory's throwing the chair out the window so everybody can escape, right? While Luke is still trying to draw out the exit plan, right? Uh, right. So what's
Luke and I
interesting.
did a teaming exercise last week that we actually like recognized each other's differences, laughed at it, and then moved on
Yeah.
and solved the problem. So like this kind of stuff actually really does work when you recognize that difference there and embrace it.
So if you think about that, is that in the past, if you're unaware, it can be really frustrating, right? It's like, oh, like I just can't understand why they just like why can't they just move and why are they such a stickler? Like where we take it into a frustration, or if we actually truly understand it, we can actually leverage it, right? We're flipping the script. We're changing the narrative. And so instead of being frustrated, I'm appreciative
Yeah.
and I'm respectful. It's completely a 180. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, we're bringing a lot of humor into it, I
Yeah.
would say too, which has been fun. I enjoy that.
Yeah. So
We
once you bring,
have
yeah, and so instead of that's now it's always saying that we have a choice, right? I can be frustrated and angry,
yeah.
or I can laugh, right, and have fun. No, which
Right.
one is going to get you a better result?
We've been enjoying quotes as well.
Yeah.
Quotes have been
Oh,
good.
oh, share, do
Yes.
share.
I can't remember when Luke had a great quote last week. We used it quite a bit. And probably I've forgotten about it, of course. I don't remember anything.
Dory.
Yeah, it was good. It was good at the time.
So, so I guess just for fun, because we get to shift. I'm the host. I get to do what I want. But think about, so Luke, right? What would be one thing that you could thank Dory for that helps you get better?
Yeah. So thinking back to like last week, right? I'm very appreciative and thankful for the energy and kind of ideas that you have to share. There are times when we kind of get stuck, right, doing the same thing, and we need either a bigger picture perspective or um, someone to say, that's good, but like let's time out and do something different, right? So appreciate that.
And vice
Thank you.
versa,
That's
Dori.
good. Yeah, I mean, I would say, Luke is definitely a grounding force, and helps keep me on track with where we're heading. So I think that I can be distracted sometimes, and can go a little off course, and then that's where you get somebody like Luke, and honestly, so incredibly knowledgeable about so many things. I really respect his like depth of knowledge, which is incredibly helpful because I am not that deep. So I really do appreciate that.
Yeah. So isn't that fascinating, right? So now you get to really truly appreciate and respect what the other person brings, and ultimately we're better together, right? And this
Yep.
comes back to interesting is now there's art and science still, right? Coming together. So, yeah, I think that's absolutely fascinating. So there, you're the first to hear it about the thank you theory, and you're the first ones to ever do this publicly. So, uh, and what
We
was
have to have more
interesting about
pairs on going forward.
Yeah,
what's that?
because you have to have pairs on going forward so they can thank each other. You're not going to be able to have singles.
Yeah, that's right. Hey, wait a second.
Whoa.
So, um, so yeah, no, that's really, I think it's really fascinating, and it's really nice to see. And it's one of the things when I was working with Sanborn Head is that I started to see that in the day when we're working together. It's kind of started to form, and it was really interesting to watch on the outside. And I always say that you can never see the label when you're inside the bottle, right? So people get locked into their own ways of doing things. And I was talking to Charlie and Barrett. We had dinner, and Charlie says to me, he says, "Warren, I've got to know you a little bit. We spent some time together," and he says, "I've really come to discover you really do need a Rachel." So to my audience, that's my EA. But it's the same thing, Dory, is that, like, now I got my theory, I got my ideas, and I had it in the airplane, and now it's like, okay, now who's going to help me build a structure? Who's going to help me stay on track? Who's going to help me get information? Who's going to, right? And so when Charlie said that, I'm like, I'm not sure how to take that, but yes, I do. I am a self-professed squirrel, so yeah. So to the Lukes of the world, right? Thank you for helping keep us on track. To the Dories of the world, thank you for all the incredible innovation, new ideas, right? And then stopping the death by meeting, and saying, "Hey, here's where we're going next." So both of you, right? It's a great contribution. So that sort of leads into the next question is, as you know, that geese do fly 71% further and faster when they're flying in the V formation than when they're flying solo. So I know that at Sanborn Head, and you too, I mean, that's where did some work together, is that you're working on this leadership development. So what do you think the secret sauce is? What do you think the secret is to getting people to actually truly fly in a V formation?
So there's definitely an aspect of supporting each other, right? In the analogy that you use with the flock of geese, the benefit, right? That the uplift benefit that the geese provide to each other, but also I think just the consistency of the communication, right? Going back and forth amongst all the team members. Sometimes that communication is just simple encouragement. Sometimes it's direction. Sometimes it's technical, right? And you're getting into the specifics of the project, or kind of the leadership focus. But those two kind of really speak to me the most: the supporting aspect and the communication.
Yeah, and I think from my perspective, you know, at different times when you're running a business, there are different things that are important. And there are different people who are probably more skilled at leading kind of those different things. And so it's kind of prioritizing what's important in the moment and letting somebody step up and lead that effort and having kind of the support system to help that. And then, tackling that and having the next person kind of step up because there's always something that you're working through as a business, that's not running optimally. And so you're kind of leveraging the skills of the team at the moment that you need the most, to try to navigate through, whatever's happening at the time, I would say.
And so, from just a leadership perspective, you say, okay, we have, and this is what I call the golden pond. So it's like, where are we going? Where are we migrating to? Um, as a leader, when you position somebody else to say, hey, I see what you're capable of. I see what you can contribute. I want you to run, lead this next, either the project, the phase, the time, because it's always moving. And then they get appreciated for who they are and how they contribute to the broader perspective. How do you think they feel, and how important do you feel that is?
I mean, there's absolutely nothing better than the gift of giving somebody that type of growth opportunity. I think it's probably pretty rare that you'd find somebody who doesn't appreciate that. And I do think it's something that we focus on here at Sanborn Head all the time. Even creating we've focused a lot on some really kind of open-ended career paths to give people more opportunity to kind of leverage their skills and what they're best at, and not have really strict standards that people need to stick to, and allowing people to kind of explore what they really like doing best, and how because we're better when people are working and they're happy and they're enjoying what they're doing. They really end up, it's good for them and it's good for us, right? They produce more when they're happy and loving what they do. And it's a better place to be when you're in like this collaborative group of people who are all like jazzed over what they're doing, right? That's the ultimate goal, is you have a collaborative group who's really excited about what they're doing. And so I think there's nothing you can't accomplish when you have a team that's really functioning like that.
Luke, do you want to add anything to
That sounds good to me.
that? Well,
That sounds like a place you might want to work.
well, then that's a great point, right? Gee, that sounds like a place I'd want to work, right? So,
Yeah.
and if we look back, and maybe Luke, I don't, I'm not trying to put you on the spot here, but if you look back 20 years ago, or even Dori, back in your past of bigger organizations you worked with, was it more about just getting work done, or was it about, hey, here's what we can accomplish? I mean, it's a completely different energy.
Yeah. So something that I experienced early in my career, you mentioned, 20 years ago. So about 2 to 3 years into my career, the work is hard, right? And
Mhm.
there's a moment where you kind of stop and think like, do I want to keep doing this,
Mhm.
right? And looking at my realistic options, like, well, I can keep doing this somewhere else, or I can keep doing it here, or I can do something completely different, right? And I made the choice, again, going back to this, right, intentional choice concept. I really do want to stay here. And there's some ways that I can, maybe change how the day to day looks a little bit, and maybe signal like I'd like to go in this direction, right? But the the structure here and the people here, I was like, there. I don't think I'm going to find better anywhere else. So it was a important decision in my career, and I share this, with my mentors and mentees, and say like this was kind of a decision I had to make, and the reason that it was crystal clear in my mind were the people here.
And what's interesting, looking back in time of, like, there was a time when it was sort of, especially leadership was a lot of command and control. This is the work, this is what you do, and you work your hours and you put in your log time, and it was very, a lot of structure and rules. And now what you're hearing is, yeah, it's, hey, we're having fun and we're purposeful and it's exciting and right. I want to be along. I want to be collaborative, and how that has changed. And when I used to talk to companies and they'd say, well, those are all soft skills. They're just soft skills, right? I'm like, they are not soft skills. They're people skills. And leading people is one of the hardest things that you'll ever do. And so when you look back at it and how it's shifted and how it's changed, which way would you rather play, right? Would you rather be like
Yeah.
rules, would you rather be command and control, or would you rather be purposeful and everyone want to be able to contribute to something bigger than themselves? But the change is quite interesting over time, isn't it?
Mhm.
So I saw that I saw that in Sanborn Head was there's when I think about just listening to you and knowing knowing Charlie and knowing Barrett but it's like we're a generational company. We want this thing to go forward for generations. We want to be bigger than something than just us. And
Yeah.
I think
Mhm.
that is very inspiring.
Yeah, I mean, it's part of the culture, right? So we live that every day. And I think, as part of that kind of leadership team, we are constantly thinking about that as we're doing our job every day.
Mhm. It's hard work, isn't it?
Yeah, but it's very gratifying, I would say. So it is hard work, but there's nothing better than knowing that you've impacted somebody's life in a positive way. There's nothing better.
And could you take that same sentiment not only internally in Sanborn Head, but externally towards your clients?
Yeah, and I think that we do,
Yeah.
for sure. I mean, we're always looking for ways to make their lives better, easier, whatever we are listening to them and kind of figuring out what their priorities are and then helping them achieve whatever they're looking to do.
Yeah. Someone was sharing just last week, right? They sometimes feel like their job is helping the client de-stress, right? Like
Yeah.
I have a problem, right? And my goal, this person was sharing is like my goal is to listen to them, help them, see what the future could look like, with a problem successfully solved, and then like help walk through that. And by the end of the conversation, the the energy coming through is like, oh, thanks. Like I feel like this is a good solution. I feel like we can, achieve this, and that's you can really feel it when someone else has, gotten through whatever that crisis was in the moment and is moving forward.
Yeah, we do it in a genuine way, though. As the interesting thing is, we actually just care.
Mm.
And then whether we're caring for people or we're caring for clients or we're caring for some outside component of the world, right, to make it better, we actually care. And I think that people will know when they interact with the team that it's genuine. And that's the difference, right? You can't make that stuff up and get those feels when it's not genuine.
So this may be a bit of a controversial comment, but I like going there anyway. Is let's just pretend for a second that Sanborn Head gets swallowed up by some big conglomerate firm that has, zillion people in it, right? Um,
Different
or
door, right?
or right, we stay as a multi-generational, authentic, unique, purpose-driven, caring organization. Um, you know, but let's just pretend that you get well these big organizations. Um, my thoughts are is that you lose all that because it just becomes around doing the work versus caring for the people. And I think, if just would you like to get your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, right? So those big companies have people who care in them for sure, right?
Hmm.
But I think that, sometimes just due to their sheer size, it's really hard to have, we find it right across some of our offices to have, you have to be really intentional to have that culture across all your different offices. And so, sheer size is just part of it. I would never want to say that those companies don't have people that care, because they do. And I'm sure there's people within them who care about the people who work for them. It's hard to create the same feel that we have here in those types of businesses. It just is.
Yeah, I wonder if it's just more exhausting, right? So if you're a single person pulling in that caring direction, or a small team pulling in that caring direction, versus a whole culture that's hopefully pulling all in that same direction.
Yeah. And I think there are some companies who are large who really do it right, right? And that are really like good places to be. And so I don't know that, I think that Luke's probably right. That it's probably just a little bit harder. And that's about it. But there's places that do it okay too.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to bring that up. I just think it's, I look at it from the perspective of and I've seen it in organizations, they get to a certain size, and then that's where they can say they have a culture, but do they actually live it? And I think that's where it starts to shift. And I think because it's very hard work, the bigger you are, right? And then
Yeah.
you separate into smaller flocks, right? So, but does everybody know where we're going, right? And why? So,
Yeah, it's definitely an advantage for us at our size.
Yeah, absolutely. So, which leads me to the next question is, what is Sanborn Head doing to better the pond? What is Sanborn Head doing to make the world a better place in any capacity?
Like I said, we are participating in some pretty cool projects. Um, uh, they can sometimes be very public, and people can know the immediate benefit of the things that we're doing, whether that's housing or a space that people enjoy. Sometimes it's just supporting. It's a little harder to see the immediate impact. Might be a utility project or something along those lines. But um, you know a lot of times what we do starts with a dream big idea, right? And when that's finally realized, somebody's dream's been realized, and the people around that dream are being able to interact with it. So
Yeah, and then I think from my perspective, Sanborn Head has a lot of impact on community. And they have a lot of we have a lot of people who are out in the community serving, on board of directors, on with different organizations, and really kind of helping to lead, different types of, programs that help support our communities. And I think, we give volunteer time to everybody every year. They have hours that they can use on the company. We support and encourage people in being involved in all different types of groups. We feel strongly about it. And so I think there's a lot of focus on us supporting and helping our local communities wherever we are.
One of the things I looked when I was looking at your website, and there's just some few things I just thought I'd share because I think it's incredible, some of the things. The list is longer than what I have. But I mean, you're looking at the Boston Rescue Mission, so that's helping there, helping, with the United Way in a bigger capacity. You got a pay It Forward project that you're being involved in. We got Lunch and Legos, which I would like to be involved in. Um, the YWCA Kids Safe Collaboration, and there's more that went on, right? So it really just, when I was looking at it, it's like, wow, I didn't actually realize how much community involvement that Sanborn Head is involved in.
Yeah, we take pride in that. So,
And just out of interest sake, is why does that matter so much? Why do you think that matters to Sanborn Head as an organization?
I mean, at kind of a fundamental level, at some point in all of our lives, like, somebody's helped us, right? So it makes sense to have a desire to return that.
yeah, and it's interesting because helping the communities that we live and work in can only make us all better, right? And so it's just quite frankly the right thing to do.
I believe strongly in give relationships. So not give take relationships.